We should be back. Hopefully you can hear me if you can. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Welcome, welcome. If you're just streaming in, sorry for the abrupt end. Just had to take care of something that came up. Audio should be working. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. We're good. Everybody's safe. He has indeed returned. Everybody's safe, don't worry. In fact, I think that we have a guest still waiting, which is lovely. Just finishing on setting things up. One moment. Then we can bring him up, and we can jump right back into it. Yeah, I can give you 5 minutes, Cody. That's fine. I'll bring up somebody else in the meantime. How often do you go against Flurf? Pretty often. Oh, Black Cat, do you gonna be a brave little boy? Oh, you can't come up. Oh, poor baby can't come up. Oh. Count was at 500. What count was at 500? What's broken? No, it's Black Cat Man. Black Cat Man's a little baby boy. Black Cat Man is a dedicated hate watcher. Mesa, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Blitz?
I'm doing all right. What religion do you believe in?
Christianity.
Okay. Yeah, so why?
I mean, I think probably the best way to approach this is to, rather than focusing on a specific religion, like, do you have issues with like a deistic position?
I don't think it's true.
First and
That
foremost,
counts as an issue.
why not?
I don't see any good reason to believe it. It doesn't seem to offer a whole lot of extra explanatory power on top of some naturalistic worldview. And it seems kind of ontologically extra.
Doesn't it simplify the ontological argument? I mean,
No,
you may
now
be making,
you have to introduce a whole new class of beings.
in what sense?
You have to introduce that metaphysical beings exist, not just physical things. Which is
Okay,
like,
but
that's
like
like a big ontological pill to swallow, that there's a whole nother category of things that could exist.
But from that category, you can explain everything that happens in the universe around you.
Not really.
In principle, if you're going to take that leap, you're going to take the creationist leap.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, let's suppose for a moment that a deist God exists. How did God create the universe?
Well, I mean, like, why? Okay, I don't want to get too drawn on semantics here, but like, create in terms of like an event or an evolution.
Whatever it means to create the universe. How did God do it?
Like someone creating a watch or someone creating, I don't know, like something in our reality or in a more general sense, because
Just
I
whatever
guess
sense God
there's
created
no,
the universe in. Just in
well,
whatever sense, how did God do it?
there's no compelling evidence that the universe was created in an instant.
I'm not making the assumption that it was. I'm just saying, in
Okay.
whatever sense God is responsible for creating the universe, how did he do it?
Through the instantiation of boundary conditions.
Yeah,
I
how
think
did
would
he
be
do
my
that?
first response to that.
Like how did he do that?
Well, I mean, we can keep asking why with everything or how,
Well, no, the point is
but
that if the claim is that God can explain how the universe got here, then I need an explanation, not just God made it happen. That's not an explanation. I want to know how it happened.
I
That's
think
the thing I care about.
wouldn't the deist claim be more why? Why the
I
universe
mean,
exists?
maybe, but
Why
I
there's
don't.
some fundamental order?
Why? Maybe the deist would claim that that's the extra explanatory power that it has. But like, I mean, you can offer similar explanations from a naturalistic worldview
To the why or to the how?
to both in principle.
What would be your explanations to the why?
I mean, in principle, one could just say a multiverse, and that's why. That's why our universe is the way it is.
A multiverse, what, in terms of inflation,
No,
creating
just
separate pockets,
yeah,
or
or like the
quantum
string or
mechanical
like the string.
multiverse.
I mean, like the string landscape kind of multiverse where every possible instantiation of laws of physics has been instantiated, or something like that.
The 10 to 500 or whatever the absurd
Yeah,
number is these days of
yeah.
possible configurations. But that's not really giving a why. That's still a how. I mean, there must be some mechanism for picking
Well,
out
no, then
something
there isn't a
preferred
why.
in that.
No. The point is that they all exist, and so we would find ourselves in one of them. Then there is no need to have a why then, because they would all exist.
Okay, but then I guess we're back to. I guess we're going to the anthropic argument that the
Yeah,
one
you
we're
could
in
offer
is
an
the one we're
anthropic
in
argument.
because we can ask because of the one we're asking.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be consistent with what we know of the operation of the universe for it to just try every possible combination and then randomly sort of find something? Don't you think there's a little bit more order behind the universe, mathematically, physically?
We would so if you buy into the this type of multiverse idea, then of course we would find ourselves in a universe where the laws of physics give rise to order, because that's where life can form.
Sure, but do we buy into the idea that the laws of physics are just like random rolls of the dice and like
Maybe they
maybe
are, but if they're
10 to
not
the
random,
500 time?
if they're not random rolls of the dice, then you have necessary laws of physics, in which case you don't need a god anyway.
Why couldn't God be some kind of boundary condition that necessitates the laws that we find ourselves in?
Well, I don't. Boundary
And
conditions are
you,
like
I'm
physical states. I don't know what you mean by boundary conditions in this context, aside from like what's typically used in partial differential equations.
or like an ADS conformal boundary to the
So
universe,
you're
with the
saying
universe
God
existing in a
is the
bulk,
conformal boundary?
or maybe it exists in the conformal boundary,
Well, the conformal boundary is not a place. Keep that in mind, right?
but it does have proper time,
Sure. That's just because
and
you
it
can conformally
is
compactify it.
and it is
Well, okay.
reachable by
To be
null
clear, it doesn't have
geodesics from the bulk.
it doesn't have a preferred proper time, right?
Preferred in the sense of,
It doesn't have like a time like killing vector field or something like that, because it's a conformal manifold, not a Riemannian manifold or Lorentzian manifold.
I thought ADS-CFT implied a time-like killing vector field for the conservation of the overall conservation of energy, the
Yeah.
evaporation of gravitational waves.
So if you
Evaporating.
stipulate that the boundary is conformally flat, then you do get a preferred or a preferred killing vector, because you can just choose the flat
Or
representative. But
or
that's
if
like a
it's
choice.
asymptotically or if it's asymptotically ADS.
If it's
If the veil
asymptotically
tensor goes
ADS, the
to
boundary is
zero at the
conformally
boundary.
flat. If
Okay. All
yeah,
right,
yeah,
fine.
then it is
Yeah.
conformally flat. It
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
not. Do you actually believe in God,
Mm-hmm.
or are you just trying to
100%.
smuggle in a conversation about holography?
No, I 100%. I am a Christian.
Okay,
I
because I'm
find
happy to
this,
talk about holography, but
yeah, no, I realize, but I think holography, like if you boil it down, it does have some theological resonations to God existing outside of time, being omniscient, being able to affect things, but also preserving all information that occurs in the bulk out at the boundary.
so
I
so
often I hear like a. So sorry, can I
yeah, go
just
ahead.
finish this thought? Often I hear this kind of complaint about Christianity as like, well, first we have to overcome the hurdle of deism, and often the complaint is like, right, how can something exist outside of space time in inverted commas? But I think the ADS-CFT correspondence gives a fairly neat package, potentially, if we want to explore the theology of that in terms of belief. I'm not saying that the people who wrote the Bible had a deep understanding of ADS-CFT and that's what they're actually trying to get to. But after the fact, if we're trying to come to some kind of rationalization of the view of some entity living outside of space and time, but also affecting and also being knowledgeable infinitely or completely knowledgeable of what's occurring, I would argue the ADS-CFT correspondence gives you a fairly robust vehicle for that view.
There's a problem with this. If God lives in the conformal boundary of, first of all, our universe is not asymptotically ADS. That's a fact. So it doesn't really work. But supposing for a moment that there is some version of holography that does work for our universe, that would mean that God lives in fewer dimensions than we do, which means that we can do something God can't do, namely move in 3 dimensions.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No. Fine. But can I go back to your first point?
Yeah, sure.
Is it categorically proven that we don't live? The if we imagine the universe to be infinite space-like dimension, could it asymptotically approach flat space-time? I mean, I'm not entirely
So
convinced that's been ruled out.
it seems like most people assume that the universe is either asymptotically de Sitter or asymptotically Minkowski.
But aren't the measurements on the cosmological constant quite at the tipping point? I mean, they're basically at the boundary where they could be. Yeah, their error margins can put them either into
So
plus
the
one, minus
so
one, or zero.
there's questions about what the cosmological constant is, um, but or whether it's even constant. This is a recent development, but suffice it to
Yeah,
say,
but sorry, hold on. The DESI results. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they're sigma less than 3, and there is a
No,
potential
there's
for
sigma. There's
systemic.
sigma's about 3.5.
But they rely on combination of different
That's
experimental
true.
results, and I don't think are there systemic issues between
That's the
those data
question. I'm
sets.
actually fairly
Yeah.
convinced that their results are genuine, but people are welcome to disagree.
Would you classify that as a belief or
I mean,
as something
I'm so
motivated?
so I like. I mean, just work out the statistical significance, right? I have a credence equal to the statistical significance of their data, which is like ninety
Yeah,
nine
yeah, but
percent.
but we have to be looking for systemic or systematic correlations between the experiments that they're combining. If it was their pure data set alone, I think DESI is giving like 2.8, but they can ramp that up to just over 4 if they start combining that with the candles and the other observations. But there is a potential that those two data sets are interacting
Maybe,
in a
but
statistically
even
spurious way.
sigma of 2.8 is like what, like 98%, 98% probably, or a 2% chance of it being a statistical fluke, something like that.
Yeah, it's like 1 in 900 of it
Yeah,
being.
so
Is it
still
1 in
quite.
900?
I don't know. I'd have to do the calculation. But like
Yeah,
still,
but like
even if you get
we
rid
can
of like it's still very very likely that it's not a fluke, right?
but we can cast that. There have been Sigma 2.8 over the last 5 years. We can cast our minds back to other results which had startling. I think wasn't there a faster than light proposition that had like a
Yeah, yeah,
similar
yeah. So
sigma,
so
which was.
look, it's possible that it's wrong. If you want to call it a belief,
Mhm.
you can, but it's like an evidence. It's I like, well, sure, yeah, it is a belief. It's just a belief based on statistics and data, right?
But do you think you have a motivation for that belief being non-physics based, like being a personal preference of how you would like to see the dynamics of the universe
I
evolve?
was a shill for the cosmological constant for a long time. I actually wrote a paper
Okay,
trying to explain why the cosmological constant was so small, like a year ago.
I read that paper.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I don't understand what Richie or Ricky flow is. To be honest, that's
That's
beyond my
fair.
abilities. But anyway, going back to the point, like I'm not entirely convinced we can rule out an ADS boundary with current observations. And let's put that aside. If there was an ADS boundary, and if we were to grant space-time being 4+1, because we would need, for a UV complete theory on the boundary, we would need one extra spatial dimension wherever it is.
Yeah, but
If we
our
were to
universe
grant that,
isn't 4+1.
I know, but if you would grant these two failures potentially of observation, that you can give us a 4.1, 4+1, and an ADS asymptotic boundary, would the theistic derivation or notion of God fit neatly into those boundary conditions in terms of the
I don't
classic
think that there's
qualities?
any notion of God that is explained well by the ADS CFT correspondence in 5 space-time dimensions. I
I'm not
don't think
saying
that
the
that.
ADS. I'm not saying ADS-CFT explains it, but I'm saying does ADS-CFT give the characteristics which are often
No, I don't think so. Not at
complained
all.
about?
I don't think it
Why
has
not?
anything to do with it, to be honest. It just seems completely unrelated.
But
Okay,
let's.
so
But let-
you have a conformal boundary. So what? The ADS-CFT correspondence
but
doesn't
the,
say that the conformal boundary actually exists. It says that there's a relationship between the two. That you can describe the same system mathematically either in 5 dimensions or in 4 dimensions.
but it does predict that you can conserve energy and information on that boundary
Yeah, so it gives you a way of describing.
necessarily.
It gives you a way of doing energy conservation in asymptotically ADS spacetime. But that doesn't say anything about like that conformal boundary being physical, right? Like actually
But you
existing.
can reach it. But you can. But theoretically, mathematically, you can reach it with null geodesics.
Yeah, you can't travel along null GD6 though.
Well, light can.
Well,
Information can reach it. Let's put it that way.
no, it can reach it not in a finite time.
In a finite time.
Hold on, I have to think. So the ADS boundary. Are you talking about like the Poincare patch?
Yeah, maybe, maybe not.
Okay, because I know one
I'm,
of
I'm
those was
just
shaped like a
looking into
triangle.
this.
Um, I have to think about
The
this.
way I understood it is like the curvature was kind of passed through by a null geodesic. It didn't get dragged down by the geometry of space time. That even though it was an infinite distance away, it could traverse it in finite time.
Uh, yeah, no, actually, that's just true. Yeah, you can get there. That's true. Although if you have finite mass, then you bounce off the boundary, I suppose.
Of course. And
Anyway,
that's the way
yeah.
that conservation of gravitational waves could imprint on the boundary, right? And you could recover the state
Yeah,
of
I
the
think
universe. You could
possibly
recover what's
Skindera
inside a
sort of
black
wrote
hole.
about that. This is
Mm.
so. So granting that this is true, I still don't know why one would believe that God exists. Granting that we live in a 5-dimensional ADS or asymptotically ADS universe, I just don't see it.
Hmm. Well, absolutely, I agree. But it would give the mechanism. It would give this
What's the
area or
mechanism?
this thing which exists outside of space time, which is omniscient and is able to influence
Why would it
what's
be
going
omniscient
on.
though? It would still exist. It would still have its own timeline, and it couldn't see the entire it couldn't see the entirety of the space time of the asymptotic ADS space time.
Yeah, but it would have the CFT imprinted on it. It would have all the information required to describe the evolution inside the bulk.
Well, yeah, but that would then so it would be omniscient in the same way that if you have like all of the information on a Cauchy surface, that you would know the entire bulk as well.
Yeah, sure. But it
And
also has it has a defined proper time, separate from
yeah, I
our
mean
proper time.
you can still you I mean you can have a defined proper time in asymptotically ADS as well. It just might not be canonical.
Sure. But those two factors exist. So if we're ticking off the classic objections to deism, it would be in principle omniscient. It would be
No,
in
wait, hold
principle
on. No, it
outside
wouldn't.
of.
That's still a stipulation, right? You're still assuming that it has all of the information and can use that information to predict the future. It would still have to be
Okay.
spread
Can,
over
can,
a. I mean, it's a conformal. It's a conformal space. So like, it doesn't even have a well-defined size. Doesn't have a well-defined, like any of this really, which is very very
but it does have an angle.
well, yeah, but not a size.
With radial coordinates, you could make a meaningful definition.
Not in a conformal manifold, you can't.
No? Okay.
Like conformal geometry is just it's the geometry of angles, right? It's not the geometry. Like
Yeah,
you
no,
lose out
exactly.
on the scale.
But if you define everything radially in terms
Radially
of
from a
angle of
point on the
rotation,
conformal manifold.
good question. Yeah,
Like you can induce a flat metric on the boundary, but that's just a choice.
exactly. And we're not really looking for phenomena which appear from a choice of basis. We'd rather do everything intrinsically.
And there is no intrinsic metric geometry on a conformal manifold.
But there are intrinsic properties, right? Independent of a
Yeah,
metric
you have
or a
like Weyl
basis.
curvature, but not in. Yeah, you have like Weyl curvature. You have a whole bunch of stuff. Do you know what my field of research is? Off chance?
Mathematical physics, right? So I guess
I do
I guess you
holography.
either work in QFT.
No, I
Oh,
do. I
really?
do holography. Yeah.
I thought you either do GR or QFT.
Yeah, I mean, I do conformal. I do GR using conformal geometric tools.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I guess I'm way out of my depth then.
Well, you're a little out of your
Um,
depth, but I am the right person to ask these questions. That said, maybe it would be a better place to. Maybe you should just join the Discord server and we could talk about this there, because this is an interesting conversation. But it might not be what people want to hear.
yeah, I guess I might be crashing your viewing numbers for the theology of ADS-CFT.
Yeah, a little
But I
bit. I
think
mean,
there might be a
it's a fun
theology
idea.
there.
It's a fun idea. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
exactly.
absolutely give you that. I'd rather talk theology about like this is certainly better than the normal like modal ontological argument.
Yeah. Or shall I make your viewers happy?
I mean,
God exists because the
it's.
Bible says so. And
I mean,
Jesus died for our
so
sins, and someone
so.
wrote it down and he existed, so fucking believe it.
Do you happen to know who Exerbia is?
No idea.
Okay, he's a British YouTuber who sounds a lot like you. Um, but anyway,
Okay.
I mean, like, so I think that there's still like the idea with the ADS-CFT theology is interesting, but I think that there's still an issue that you still require infinite processing power and infinite ability to gather information, right?
Mm.
Because I mean, like, imagine that
Yeah.
you're living on the conformal manifold. You still need to collect all of the information from the boundary at any given moment of time, and then you need to take all of that infinity of information and process it to predict the future.
Well, exactly. And words are what's it called? Like the information limit due to the surface area of the enclosed
Yep.
space.
Yeah, that's
Or
the
whatever, I forget what it's called. Would that
Ryotake
apply?
thing.
Would that apply
Probably,
to a
maybe
conformal boundary?
a conformal god.
Would a conformal god create a black hole on the conformal boundary and then spawn his own
No, there's no
conformal
gravity.
universe?
God would be floating because there's no gravity
Of course, yeah.
in the conformal boundary.
But then you could have infinite information then, in
Why?
principle, because there's no gravity. Because there's no gravity to collapse it to a black hole.
I guess is that true?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
no,
know.
because
I'm really out of my depth.
whatever information is on the boundary has to be equally well represented in the bulk, and there isn't infinite information in the bulk, right? No, actually, I guess there in principle could be because it's only conformally compact. It has infinite volume.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some sense in which you can have infinite information.
And then you do bypass that, like that
But you
bound.
still
What is it? The
have a processing
Bekenstein
problem
bound?
issue, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I really
And how
don't
do you
like
build?
information
And
theory.
what does it mean? So, I mean, the other thing is that like I don't think you can you form bound states in a like n equals 4 super Yang mills? Does that have bound states?
I have no idea.
Because presumably, if God is just like a being that lives there, maybe a really powerful being, but a being nonetheless, then like it has to be made of stuff, right?
Or be consummate with the boundary, right? I would invoke a degree of Platonic mathematics here, and ask that we accept on that boundary is where we could encounter Platonic forms of mathematics.
Wait,
If
hold
there
on,
is any
hold on.
such
Now
candidate,
we're now we're
yeah, here
now
we
we're
go.
way out.
Here we
Hold
go.
on, now I'm
We're
confused.
pivoting. We're
What?
pivoting.
What? Wait a minute. So now you're saying that even though the CFT on the boundary is like a real physical CFT, there aren't fields there, like conformal fields there. There is like chairness.
I don't know. I really am freestyling it here now. So, yes, maybe, like maybe
Then it's
you
not a
could,
CFT. Why is there? Why are there abstract objects? Why is chairness in the CFT?
but okay, not physically floating there like the ideal chair, the best chair anyone has ever seen, and Donald Trump's chair is not floating in the CFT. But maybe through the imprint of the initial conditions and through the transfer of the CFT from the boundary into the bulk, you could argue that there is some credence for the Platonic existence of mathematical
We have another problem
constructs
with this view.
that shadow into our space-time.
We have another problem with this view. There is no first moment in ADS-CFT, right?
Okay, enlighten me.
and and also beyond that, that this would mean that the universe that God couldn't have created the universe because the universe would have always coexisted with the boundary.
No, but couldn't the creation of the universe be an alteration of the parameters on the CFT? Like it has its own proper time. So the boundary has its own notion of time, independent of the notion of time within our space time.
Yep, it
And
has
there
a proper
is
time, sure.
and like I'm really kind of just talking shit now. Um, I I read something the other day. There is some kind of entanglement argument of what happens in the CFT, which it could explain changes in field potentials or something. I don't know.
I'm afraid of
Regardless,
quantum field theory, by the way. So like, I do the geometry, but the once you start talking about entanglement wedges and things like that, I get scared and run away. So
look, QFT is just symmetry groups put together, and the
and
subalgebras are
correlators,
given names and their
and there's
particles.
like
So I
and
mean, it's,
CFTs have like these weird expansions that I don't understand, operator product expansions and stuff.
yeah,
I don't know.
I
I
don't
I
think
like the
the
geometry
lack of
part
a
more.
stop. I think you're absolutely right. I think you can look at the CFT as the boundary being completely timeless and eternal. Again, going back to some
Well, but so is
theological
the bulk,
classics of
right?
God. Is it? Is it though? Is it?
Yeah, it is.
And I guess this is the big question: can there be a change of state on the boundary which instantiates the creation of our space time within the bulk?
Okay, so to be clear, your theory of God, which by the way, do you
I wouldn't
believe
call it a
this?
theory, by the way.
Yeah, well, okay, your shower thought of God, which is supposed to be consistent with the Christian God, by the way. um, your shower thought of God is lives in a four-dimensional conformal or Lorentzian conformal manifold, and
Or
it
is,
man,
or is that
it
manifold?
is the four manifold. Okay,
Yeah.
and it manipulated the four manifold to cause the interior to pop into existence. Is that what you're suggesting?
Why not? How is that any more wild than Noah's Ark or Let There Be Light?
You know, all things considered, you might be right. It might be less wild. I'll give you that. Um, that said, you don't have light on a n equals 4 super Yang mills, right? It's not a unity
Agreed.
gauge
Yeah,
gauge
of
theory.
course. Yeah,
So
yeah, agreed.
You have SUN.
let there be symmetry.
Let there be gluons, something like that, right?
Let there be intrinsic curvature
Well, conformally invariant intrinsic curvature, maybe.
within the bulk.
Okay, yes, sure. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Let there be intrinsic
Yeah.
curvature. Just don't tell the flat earthers.
Mhm.
All right. Mesa, I should probably
Okay,
kick
this
you
is
off,
getting,
but this
a
is
little
fun.
bit crazy, but
No,
yeah,
this is fun. I
I
appreciate
really
you.
enjoyed this.
Feel free to join the Discord. We can
Okay,
talk about it. Okay.
okay, bye bye.
All right. Take care. All right. Let's bring up a guest from YouTube. That was fun. It was different. All right. Let's bring up Cody. Cody, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. What religion do you believe in?
So I'm a Christian.
Okay. Why should
Uh,
I be a Christian?
well, we can talk about that. What I wanted to go over with you is a little bit more in the realm of physics. Could I present an argument for more like bare theism to you?
Sure.
So, can I give you three premises, and presumably you'll disagree with at least one of them, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so premise one is quantum mechanics suggests that possibility is ontic as opposed to merely epistemic. Premise two is that possibility is inherently referential. It refers to the thing it's saying it's predicating possibility to. And premise three is referentiality, or you might say intentionality, is inherently a property of mental states, almost by definition.
Sorry, can you repeat the second premise?
Second premise is that possibility is inherently referential. It refers to, yeah, so when I say it is possible that electron went through left slit versus electron went through right slit, it's possible that A or possible that B, that refers to the electron in a way that's not linked to the electron by way of kind of any physical connection we might think about. It refers to states of the electron to say that it is possible, something is possible about the electron.
Okay, I think I understand what you mean. And then when you say possibility is ontic, can you describe what you mean by that? I think I know what you mean, but I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
So I'll say it mathematically, and then I'll say it in plain language. What I mean by possibility being ontic is that a diagonal density matrix makes different physical predictions than a non-diagonal density matrix.
Sure. But so is what you're suggesting? So you're just suggesting that the universe is not deterministic, essentially.
It doesn't necessarily come down to determinism. I guess it kind of does. It's more like, how do I want to distinguish that? Are you familiar with like Ruth Kastner, like the
No,
PTI? Okay, so she is a physicist and philosopher who deals with quantum foundations, and her interpretation of quantum mechanics is called the possibilist transactional interpretation, where she says that what the state vector, the ket or the bra, refers to is some state of possibility about the electron, right? And that possibility is ontic. And there is, in my mind, there's a deterministic way of interpreting that there's different possibilities that interact in some dynamic way, and there's some, it's almost like hidden variables, except not in like a pilot wave sense where there's always a definite path of the particle, but rather the possibilities themselves are ontic and interact dynamically with each other. So
what do you mean by like in what sense do the possibilities exist? Like when you what is a possibility to you? Like, can you give me a like, because when I think of a possibility, I think of like a concept, right? I think of like a way that I could imagine things could be. But what is a possibility? Like, can you give it a concrete definition?
I would maybe want to work that up a little bit. Let me see how good I can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd want to make that a little bit more formal. You're right.
And it seems like this
Sorry.
argument is kind of predicated on a particular interpretation of quantum mechanics.
I wouldn't necessarily say so. I'd say it's compatible with basically everything except like pilot wave, QBism, things like that. Like
It's also not compatible with many worlds.
Okay, that's an interesting thing to get into, because you say you don't believe in the multiverse, but you believe in many worlds, which presumably means you assign something less than concrete physical reality to branches of the wave function.
No, so I'm totally happy with the quantum, like the many worlds multiverse. But I don't think but it's not really a multiverse. It's just one universe, just kind of in a superposition of quantum states. I don't accept the multiverse in the sense that like there's different chunks of space-time that have different properties or different laws of physics or whatever.
But I'd kind of say that the what I mean by the multiverse, or sorry, that the wave function or the superposition of quantum states is equivalent in many worlds even to what I mean by there being multiple possibilities about the state of things.
I mean, maybe, but I wouldn't call it a possibility because, well, yeah, okay, maybe you can call it a possibility.
It feels like the wave function. It feels like the wave function is something less than totally concrete, even in many worlds. And what Ruth Kastner says is that possibility exists between the realm of like purely epistemic, like not real at all, and the actual, like the.
Well, I mean, I would go as far.
Possibility is somewhere.
I would go as far to say that the wave function is all there is, in at least in the many worlds view.
That seems right. Yeah, I want to work this up a little bit more to be more compatible with so to depend less on interpretations, like any non-hidden variable interpretation. I think kind of fits in with what I'm saying here. That possibility is ontic. That that for example, if we said that what's an example? If the Cold War hadn't happened, then the Berlin Wall wouldn't have fallen. In some sense, there's no concrete reality to that. That doesn't really mean anything outside of our brains. Whereas in quantum mechanics, it's possible that interaction X took place versus it's possible that interaction Y took place. It has a different prediction. It corresponds to a different set of physical outcomes than possibility X or possibility Y took place, and we're just not sure which.
Yeah, sure, I agree. Yeah. So how does the argument go? So let's say I grant these three premises. What's the conclusion?
Well, if you grant the three premises that that possibility is referential and that referentiality, let's say intentionality, do you agree those are basically interchangeable?
No, not at all. How do you figure that?
Really?
Referentiality, intentionality, I figure requires some sort of agency. A thing could reference another thing without requiring agency.
Can you give me an example of something in physical reality that is referential without being intentional?
Well, I don't know if I can think of anything that's truly referential at all. But like at least conceptually, it's not clear to me that they're the same thing.
Mental states are definitely referential and intentional, right?
Well, but I would say that mental states are physical, or at least are manifest physically. So I wouldn't say that they're like that they're referential in like a non-physical way.
Right, but that's kind of compatible because so premise 3, I would almost call the definition of a mental state. The definition of a mental state is something that is referential or intentional, and you can kind of use those interchangeably. And whether the mental state is
something that's referential,
or intentional.
When you said referential, when you define that, you basically said that there is some relationship between a possibility and the thing that the possibility is about without having a physical connection.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right.
So,
And
That's what
that
you mean by
seems to me
referential.
like intentionality. Would you not agree that has a flavor of intentionality?
I don't think so. I mean, it might have the flavor of like some sort of abstraction, but I don't think that necessarily all abstractions are intentional.
I guess, yeah, I guess this argument could almost serve Platonism or divine conceptualism. I think it gets you to one of those if you accept the three premises.
It might.
Because
yeah, what was the second premise again? The second premise was
that possibility is referential or intentional.
Yeah, that might just be analytically true, right?
Yeah. So I will be harsh on my own argument and point out something maybe you didn't even think about. Premise 2 might be a little bit hard to defend in a way that's clearly enough not reification. Because we can talk about that a proposition of possibility is intentional or referential, but does that mean an ontic state of possibility is necessarily that way?
That was something that I appreciate you putting that into words, because like I was thinking like it seems like that you're it's I mean, like if I'm a nominalist, it seems like I would just reject premise 2.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say you have to reject premise 2 if you're a nominalist. I don't want to say you have to reject premise 1.
Also maybe premise 1, yeah. Although premise 1 might be okay premise 1 might be okay. Things in the sense that things can have ontology and nominalism. It would just be some specific thing that has ontology.
Right.
Some particular.
Exactly. So the tricky part of this argument is defining or trying to parse out whether you can separate propositions of possibility from the possibility as a thing itself.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point.
I'd be inclined to argue you can't, and it almost seems like you might agree that you can't.
Well, I think that maybe you can't, but I think it's because they're both. But I think it's because there isn't an ontic possibility.
Does that come down to you subscribe to many worlds, and so you just reject premise 1 based on your interpretation?
Well, so like an ontic possibility seems like something that's kind of not. I don't even know what that means, right? Like I don't know what it means for possibility, for something that doesn't exist to yet somehow still exist. That's a very counterintuitive.
It exists, it's just not actual. The distinction is between actuality and ontology.
Right? Can you give me an example of something that's not actual that exists nonetheless?
A virtual particle. So
those
in a
aren't
Feynman
real.
diagram.
No, those aren't real at all. Those are a math trick. They're not even fake real. They're not even virtual.
They're as real as a branch of the wave function is real, right?
No. They're as real as like a Fourier coefficient is real. So, meaning that they're not real. That's just a math thing.
Maybe I mean, so by virtual particle, I'm kind of wrapping in that. What I kind of mean is a Feynman history. A Feynman history is real but not actual, at least in some interpretations.
Okay. In that sense, perhaps, but I would just say that's real. It's either real or it's not. It's either actual or it's sorry. Let me rephrase. I would say it's either actual or it's not. And if it's actual, then it's real. If it's not actual, then it's not real.
Right, but if we try to measure which Feynman history actually occurred, we never measure 2 actual Feynman histories occurring.
Well, that's just because we're in one branch of the wave function.
Okay, and so it does come down to.
I mean, maybe like it very well could be the case that my intuition is being biased by my many worlds. That maybe I've just internalized that enough that that's just kind of the way I view the world.
That could maybe very well I'm doing the same thing with the PTI. Maybe we're both kind of biased.
What's the name of the philosopher who came up with PTI? Because I'd like to read into it because I for what it's worth, I'm actually like lately I'm very, very unsettled by many worlds. Like it bothers me a lot. Like I like it the most of all of the interpretations, but I still don't like it very much. So
So the name of I think she's a physicist and philosopher. I think she has a degree in both. Her name is Ruth Kastner, Kastner.
oh, great. Okay, I found the article in the archive. Oh, and it's about
Nice.
it's even consistent with relativity. Great. Or I found an article on the archive. We'll have to...
it gives a physical referent of like the Born rule. There's a lot of strengths to it.
Okay, neat. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Awesome. So maybe we're at an impasse, but can we maybe proceed from here, like granting premise 1 provisionally?
I mean, I mean, sure, we can grant premise 1. I still think that I still have a problem with premise 2.
Right.
Well, no, I mean, well, yeah. That's how do you defend premise 2? What's the defense there?
The defense needs to rely on some kind of, I would say it needs to be a kind of formal analytic proof that propositions of possibility are inseparable from possibility itself.
But inseparable doesn't mean that they are the thing. Doesn't like they could be just coextensive, right?
Okay, that's fair.
Like, I mean, for example, what's a good example of like a genuinely coextensive thing? I can't think of any examples, but you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes, I do.
So here's an example from your own theology. Jesus and the Father, coextensive, but not the same thing.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Okay. Yeah. I don't deny that things can be coextensive but not identical. I would grant that. So how do I defend premise 2 provisionally? Maybe what I want to mean by reference is some linkage that is not physical. Maybe just provisionally that is the definition of reference or aboutness, or being intentional towards whatever you want to say.
Some linkage. What do you mean by a linkage?
Like the so a Feynman history. Whether or not you can separate it from the statement of the Feynman history in terms of a path measure or whatever, a Feynman history refers to an electron as like a possible evolution the electron can take, or any particle, but it is not identical with the electron. So it is in some way linked.
It's in some sense
the electron.
It's a property of the electron, right?
Yeah.
So then, would you say that all properties are referential? That seems kind of strange.
Actually, I might argue that. Although in most cases, when you're talking about things that are just purely actual, that isn't problematic. So something can have an actual property that is separable from the predication of that property onto the thing, like by a proposition.
But it seems like at least the example of the Feynman history just sounds like this is just another property of the thing.
Yeah, it is, but it's not an actual property of the electron.
I mean, neither is the spin, right? But like, we still call it a property. Statement. I mean, like, the point is like whether it's spin up or spin down. Like, if it's in a superposition of spin up and spin down, then you would say that like it being spin up is not an actual property because you haven't measured it yet.
Yeah,
but like, but that just might mean that it's just not well defined. It might just be not well defined.
A spin up electron might be associated to a particular Feynman history, and a spin down is associated to the opposite Feynman history. It amounts to the same thing. The Feynman history is just a more general kind of object.
Perhaps the analogy fails because it doesn't make sense to talk about a single Feynman history prior to any sort of measurement, and that's like you're kind of making a category error by distinguishing them.
How do you figure it? Because I can write down an element of, I can write down the path measure, like an element of that Hilbert space of histories.
Sure.
So how is it legitimate to talk about that?
So let's talk about the. I mean, we don't need to talk about Feynman histories. We could just talk about like an electron that's in a superposition of up and down, right?
Right.
And so it would. You could say that, one of the possible spins that it has is up, and one of the possible spins that it has is down. But all you're saying is But all you're saying is that I think that's the incorrect statement to say. The correct statement to say is that the actual spin is in a superposition. That would be the spin property that it has. The statement, oh, it's possibly this, oh, it's possibly that, seems like it's an incorrect statement insofar as you're just leaving out information.
Okay, so again, that does come down to our interpretations again.
Well, but surely we agree that superposition exists, right?
Well, yes, of course, yeah.
So then, I mean, you are just leaving out information by specifying just what it could have been.
What I mean by the superposition is nothing more, nothing less than, I guess, the modal statement. If I were to measure the electron, I would find it in state X or state Y with X and Y probability.
Okay.
And that's kind of the PTI interpretation.
Okay. So my intuitions just don't work here. And it's weird to say that I have intuitions that are consistent with many worlds, but those are the intuitions that I've had for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I could just grant premise 1 and premise 2 and just say, yeah, sure, let's grant those. What about premise 3?
Premise 3, I would argue, is analytically true. It is the definition of a mental state to be intentional.
Well, to be referential, right?
Or yeah. I'm using those interchangeably because I think they are interchangeable. But
hold on. But that doesn't get around Platonism, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Unless you say that
right.
Platonism. So referential states are abstract, or referential things are abstract, right?
Right.
And you might say that mental states are abstract, but so are other abstract objects.
Right. So I guess this comes down to, I just think divine conceptualism is a better model for abstract objects than Platonism is.
How do you figure? By the way, I reject both, so I'm not particularly biased in this regard.
Okay. I mean, I would assume you reject the latter, but yeah, you're a nominalist. You're right. Sorry, where was I? So divine conceptualism solves the issue of why are there these, and a few years ago there was a discussion between, of all people, Roger Penrose and William Lane Craig, who, the latter of which I'm sure you don't have a lot of respect to.
Wait, Roger Penrose talked to WLC? Really? Is this on YouTube somewhere?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's on Justin Brierly's podcast. Don't quote me on that.
That's amazing. Hold on, I gotta watch that.
Yeah.
One sec. I just gotta pull it up.
They had a pretty good discussion. They went into what we're about to talk about.
Crazy.
Where?
How have I not
seen this? So there's this idea that WLC brings up, that Roger Penrose subscribes to a Platonic model of the mathematical world, but WLC, I think, accurately says that the problem with Platonism is you have these two separate worlds. You have this Platonic world of forms, and then you have the actual world. And the Platonic world of forms is somehow informed by and vice versa. They're kind of informed by each other, but there's no clear way that they are linked, because the Platonic world is, in some sense, immutable and impassive and all those classical theistic attributes. So there's no nice way for them to be linked. But divine conceptualism solves that issue. It creates a link between these forms, these abstract objects, and the real world.
How does it create that link?
Because, again, that's just a property of mental states. Aboutness is a link between the...
that's what you're saying.
Yep.
I see. Okay. But it doesn't bridge the gap. Well, wait a minute. Why couldn't the whole point was that in the Platonic world you could have this aboutness in there, That's what you would have the Platonic form of possibility, and those possibilities
Right,
would have the aboutness in them.
but once you introduce aboutness, I would say you're talking about something indistinguishable from a mental state.
I don't know if that follows
Because
from. I don't know if that follows. I mean, why can't you have Platonic aboutness?
you can. I just say if you look at that from any angle you look at that, that's going to look like a mental state, because a mental state is nothing more and nothing less than something that has intentionality.
But we didn't decide. Well, I mean, I don't know if I agreed that aboutness means intentionality.
Isn't that or do you mean referentiality? Is that a distinction you're trying to draw?
So I'm willing to agree. I'm willing to agree that referentiality and aboutness are the same. Those are.
But aboutness is by intentionality is by definition aboutness. If you look in like Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Okay, then maybe I'm using the word wrong. It's possible I'm using the word wrong. I can look that up later. And so then you then conclude that okay, so given these three premises, then you end up with some sort of mental state. How do you then get to well, how do you distinguish this from how do you obtain one God as opposed to many?
You don't necessarily, except maybe by like an Occam's razor sort of argument. There's some, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting question. I do think this argument has some benefit in that it doesn't just get you to deism; it gets you to theism. Because if you think about a path integral as being a divine concept, like the possibilities, the different Feynman histories are concepts in the mind of God, and that they're linked via aboutness to the actual evolution of the electron. If you think about it that way, it almost gives you something like occasionalism, if you're familiar with that theology.
No, I'm not. Tell me about it.
Oh, occasionalism basically means every cause is God. Like, God is the cause of every event following the previous event, which is kind of because Feynman history is like this entire set of them. You don't have to just include continuous ones. You don't have to just include nice ones. So the kind of causal link between moment A and moment B is just kind of a thing we get because the Feynman histories interfere to produce the principle of least action. And so that's where we kind of surmise causality from. But what is actually happening is that at every instant, these possibilities are kind of being computed in the mind of God to yield the next instant.
Are you saying that God is doing a path integral?
I mean, basically, yeah. That's basically the concept.
That is an interesting notion of divine conceptualism. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I guess this gives you... Hold on. Don't you end up with... I mean, you do end up with deism, right? Because you still have some sort of deterministic behavior. At least deterministic evolution of the path integral, or of the the Feynman histories. Like they will sum up in the way that we expect them to, following the Feynman integration, right?
I guess that's true. Yeah.
So does this lead you to some sort of like necessitarianism, or at least something like determinism?
I wouldn't necessarily claim that, because actually that's a really good question. Even though the path integral kind of yields a classical path, that's actually in the limit h bar goes to 0.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So how does actually this is a good question then. How is the future state decided then?
Well, that's where it comes to occasionalism. Like, God decides the collapse of the wave function at any given moment.
Okay. Do we have an issue with like non-temporality here?
That's an interesting question. I don't necessarily subscribe to like divine atemporality, if that's what you mean.
But then,
I lean more towards like dynamic omniscience or open theism.
but there's an issue. There's a conflict with relativity there, right? Because we have different planes of simultaneity, and wave function collapse has a problem with relativity in that regard too.
Yeah, it does. That's a tricky question. Yeah, I want to think about that.
By the way,
this
is one of the reasons why WLC rejects special relativity, which is absurd, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. The Lorentzian interpretation is very, very bad. Although notably, Ruth Kastner is an atheist.
That's very strange. I don't know how, I don't know how you can say, yeah, relativity of simultaneity is a thing, and then also be an atheist. But I'll just have to read the work, I guess.
Also, are you familiar with, do you know the physicist Avshalom Elitzer?
The name rings a bell, but I certainly haven't read it.
He's most famous for the Elitzer-Weidmann bomb tester.
Yep, no, I do know it, actually. I made a video about it. Yeah.
Oh, nice, yeah. Avshalom Elitzer is also an atheist.
Yeah, maybe quantum foundational people tend to be atheists because they just don't like relativity. And no wonder I'm so in on many worlds and B theory, because I'm just like, relativity, relativity is where it's at, bro.
That might be true of Elitzer. Kastner is definitely a fan of relativity.
Well, then how can you be an atheist?
I don't know. You might need to read some of her work on the subject. I have not read too deeply into her.
Well, there's a paper that I pulled up, which is it is entitled the Possibilitist Transactional Interpretation and Relativity. So we'll have to see what she says.
Oh yeah. So that is a good place to start, definitely. I will read that paper too.
Yeah, it's on the archive.
Maybe we could
10 years ago.
We could reconvene and discuss this a little bit more.
Yeah, again, you should join the Discord unless you're already in it.
Oh yeah.
Because that's a better place. It's easier to reach me at all hours rather than having to wait your turn to come up into a live.
Yes, I will. Can you? We've actually emailed in the past. Do you mind to email me the Discord link if there's not an easier way to get it?
Yeah. What's your email? Well, don't tell. Yes. Actually, don't say that. Don't say it. Just email me. Email me, and I will email it to you back.
Okay, I can do that. So yeah, what? Given
so far, I mean, given the three premises, yeah, you get to some form of abstract object that has aboutment or that has referentiality, and you might say that you get to God. Sure, the argument at least seems valid. I'd have to look at it in like a syllogistic form to confirm that, but it seems valid.
Yeah, I can send you. I do have the like full syllogism written up. But the premises that are matters of fact are what we discussed. Like everything else is just
like the usual fill in the blanks, so then you can make sure that everything connects well. Yeah, no,
exactly.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting argument. Is it original to you?
Yes, I believe so.
Have you considered writing it up? Because it's interesting.
I have actually.
Have you talked? You should talk to. Well, I don't know. Do you have any academic credentials of any kind?
I'm currently a PhD student.
Oh, okay. Then you should just email Ruth Kastner. Say, hey.
Yes, I
just do it.
Discussed this with her.
Oh, you did. Okay.
I haven't discussed this argument with her. I've discussed the interpretation with her. Basically, this argument is more or less just me gluing together two different books, which is number one, Ruth Kastner's The Transactional Interpretation of Quantum Mechanics, and number two is Alexander Proust's Actuality, Possibility, and Worlds, where he argues for divine conceptualism with respect to modal truths. So PTI gives you modal truths are ontic, divine conceptualism gives you ontic modal truths are divine thoughts. And so just putting those together basically gives you my argument.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, this sounds like something that you could probably just submit to a philosophy journal. Like, so first I would figure out, well, yeah, and you could even involve Alexander Proust. Like, why not?
Yeah, I actually have reached out to him with this argument. I haven't heard back from him. I've talked to him, like he'll respond to the first email, but then doesn't like get time going to the actual.
Yeah,
Depths.
it's certainly interesting. I mean, like, I'm not. I guess the reason why I'm not on board is because I'm not really sure I'm convinced of the transactional interpretation, but I'll go look into it certainly.
Okay, yeah. If you were convinced of like PTI, basically premise one, would that get you to at least like deism or like
Maybe. I mean,
polytheism
like
or
I'd
something?
have to think more about it and like look at it in syllogistic form, of course, just because
Mhm.
you know, like hard to evaluate a syllogism on the spot. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it certainly seems valid. I don't see any issues with it.
Awesome. I appreciate you saying so.
Yeah. It's neat.
Cool.
It's
I'll
it's
talk
honestly
to
the
you
most
more in
original
the
argument
Discord.
I've ever heard. So you know, kudos to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm planning to have a debate with FTFE where I'll present those maybe in a little bit more detail with a PowerPoint.
You're gonna have. So does FTFE know quantum mechanics?
Well, he has a bachelor's degree in physics, so I mean,
Okay.
not as well as you, but
Yeah. Okay. So if he has a bachelor's in physics, it might be okay. I mean, like the only thing is like this argument is going to be wildly unpowerful against anybody who doesn't know anything about quantum mechanics. Like it will have no convincing power, right?
Well, I appreciate you saying so because that isn't what you said. That's kind of the opposite of most like quantum arguments from God for God. Is it only works against people who do know?
Yes,
or
that's
don't know
true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, it requires. Yeah, so if you want, so I'm probably going to kick you off soon because you know I only have 30 minutes left, and you know we can talk later. But if you want to repeat the three premises just quickly for everybody, because some people are curious, by all means.
Yes, absolutely. Premise one is quantum mechanics suggests that possibilities are ontic. Premise two states that possibilities are inherently referential, or in my mind, that is equivalent to aboutness or intentionality. And premise three is analytically true by definition. Referential states or possible state, or referential states or aboutness states are mental states by definition. That is what a mental state is. It's something that is intentional. So those are the three premises.
And the conclusion being that there exist. A
universal mental state is maybe what you would say.
Actually, it doesn't imply that though, right? It's actually not sound if that's your conclusion, or not valid if that's your conclusion. It implies that there are mental states, right?
I do have one other. Well, yeah, but they're not human mental states. Path integrals existed long before humans. They'll exist long after we're gone. Or like the maybe what I should say is Hamilton's principle was a valid principle of the universe before humans and will be after humans, and so path integrals.
It sounds like mathematical Platonism with God attached.
I mean, that's kind of what it is, but by assigning aboutness to the Platonic objects, that is more like divine conceptualism. I mean, that's kind of what divine conceptualism is.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Platonism with aboutness.
Anyway, I'm going to kick you off.
Okay.
But thanks for being here. And if you guys want to see the argument, I'm going to invite Cody to the Discord later, and I'm sure that you'll post it in there. So,
yes.
Yeah, all right. Well, take care. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. You do. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Do you hear a female voice in the back? Oh, no, it's not me. Yeah, it's kind of Tegmark, but with God attached, which, you know, it's cute. Like, I'll give it that. It's definitely cute. All right. Let's bring up a guest from TikTok. By the way, if you guys like the live, make sure to like the live and subscribe and tippy tappy, all of these lovely things. Let's talk to I Am Legend.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. Legend, how's it going?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. What God do you believe in, and why should I believe in it?
I believe I am God.
Okay. I suspect you're not. Where'd you go?
Right.
Okay.
So here you go.
So why should I believe that you're God?
Right. So the last guest you just talked to set forth a premises, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to set forth a premise, and you're going to deny it. You decide.
Probably.
You determine what is true and not true to you. Do you accept premise?
Well, yeah. So what's the premise?
The premise is you determine what is true and not true to you.
I don't know if truth is a property that's inherent, that's like subjective. So Yeah, I don't think I accept that premise.
Right, so that's
I
why
don't,
you're going to
I don't
deny
even,
yourself.
I don't even know what the premise means, to be honest.
You decide what is true or not true to you.
I don't know what true to me means.
What you believe in, what like whatever you think
So
is
I also
real.
don't think I decide what I believe.
Right, so this is what I'm saying, that you deny yourself, right?
No, I just deny, freedom of choice
Okay,
to
now I'm going to
believe.
demonstrate this to you in an opposite way.
Okay.
Is there
do.
truth?
Like in some standalone objective sense? No, I don't think so.
So there is no truth in your paradigm.
No, I think that propositions have truth values.
Well,
but I don't think that
you
truth
think
truth
that
on
they
its
have
own
truth
exists.
value, but how do you determine that?
That's just what
Wait
I
a
mean
minute.
by a proposition. Something that
Right, so
that has a truth value.
so let me ask, is there truth?
Not as a standalone thing, but as a property of, propositions, sure.
So you're deciding what is true or not true to you.
I don't think that that's at all what I'm doing.
Is there truth?
I've answered your question now 2 times.
Well, you haven't answered it because you're in one statement saying that there is no truth. In the next statement, you are saying there is truth given
clarifying
these
what my position
guidelines.
is. So my position is that insofar as you're suggesting that truth exists on its own, separately from anything else, no, I don't think truth exists. Insofar as truth is a property of a proposition, yes, it does exist. These are 2 different
Right,
notions.
so you're deciding what is true or not true to you.
No, I'm not. This is just what I mean by truth.
Well, we're going to have a hard time correlating when you are determining what is truth. I'm going to tell you what is truth.
We're just talking
right?
about what words mean, right? Aren't we talking about what words
Not
mean?
really. So I'm giving you what truth is. I'm actually telling you what truth is.
Give me your definition.
Yeah.
Why not?
My definition of truth is you decide what is true or not true to you.
You use the word true in a definition of truth, so can you give me a better definition?
Truth is that which you subjectively agree to.
Okay, that's just not what I mean when I say truth. So if by truth you mean that which you subjectively agree to, then yeah, of course it's something that I decide, because that's how you define the word.
Right. So I mean, it's not really hard. I know
But
you
like
think
that's just not
maybe
what
it's like a
anybody else
gotcha
means when they say
moment.
truth.
All I'm saying is like when you look at something and you say, "Oh, that's," or somebody tells you something and you say, "That's not true." Right? You are deciding if that's true or not to you. It's the most logical statement.
How is that to me? If I say that something isn't true, it's because I know that there is an alternative, and the alternative is the thing that's true.
Right, you are deciding the alternative is true.
This is a knowledge statement, not a decision.
No, it's not.
What decision am I making?
Okay, wait a minute. Let's, and I hate to even bring this in, but it's a really good example of this. The Earth is flat.
I hope you don't believe that.
Well, I do. So the Earth is flat.
That's embarrassing. Okay.
Okay, but let's just go with the concept, right? For me, I am deciding my truth. For me,
there
the
is
Earth
no
is
your
flat.
truth and my truth. There are
there
are true propositions and
to
false
me,
propositions.
Blitz, to me, not to you. I'm not deciding your truth.
I don't know what my truth, your truth means. Propositions have truth values. People don't.
Blitz, you decide what is true or not true to you. Is the Earth flat?
Things aren't true to a person. Propositions are true. This is not a.
You're stepping outside of yourself. You're trying to go all over the place, and I understand. I'm not trying to go there. I'm just trying to show you that
your sentences just don't make sense.
Name something that you believe is true.
Oh, there are lots of things that I believe are true.
Okay, name something that is true.
The sky is blue.
That is true.
Yeah, it's not true to me. It's just true. It's a true proposition.
No, it's true to you.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, think about somebody that was colorblind. Would the sky be blue?
The sky would still be blue.
To you. To them, it would not be.
Okay, let me correct. The sky is blue to those who have the ability to perceive 3 different primary colors. How about that? That's
Yeah,
a
I
true
can agree
statement.
to that. To that person, they are deciding for them that the sky is blue because they have cones in their eyes. They can see different things. Cool.
No,
But
but
that
that's
is
the
their
proposition that I gave you is a true statement. It's not like a subjective. It's not like a statement that like depends on a person's opinions.
well, it depends on the person's perspective, their own individual
No,
interaction
it
with the
really doesn't.
media.
I am the cheese for the $2. Thank you. That my truth is Dr. Blitz is my biological mother. It's not true. That's false. I am not
So I'm not
anybody's
really,
biological mother.
Blitz, I'm not really trying to get over on you, and it's not something I ask other questions of like flat earthers, and I'm in that field, so um, I'll ask certain questions and they'll just deny it, right? And
I don't
and
know
it's
what you're
like they're
talking about.
denying it because they don't want to go down that path when they should just accept the truth. The truth is, Blitz, you decide for you what you're going to accept as truth. That's the truth.
That sentence didn't mean anything to me. I'm sorry.
Okay, let me slow it down.
I don't
Blitz.
need slower. I need less
You
words salad.
decide. I don't know what part of this that you're not understanding, and if you
Yeah,
can
what does
point it
true
out,
to you mean?
what I accept as real.
Okay, so what you accept as real is different from what is real. Can we agree on that?
See, you're kind of going off on semantics, and you're trying
Stinky
to skip
Ethian with the
around.
$2. Is truth
You're
locally
beating
real?
around the
No, it's not.
bush,
I'm not beating
Blitz.
around the bush. I'm
Instead
being
of
very direct. Please
no,
stop
you're
using
not.
word salad. Propositions are true or false. Has nothing to do with the subject.
Okay, Blitz. Name something that's true again, Blitz.
Yes. Human beings that have the ability to see with 3 cones will perceive the sky as blue. That's true. During
Yeah,
the
that's
day
true.
when it's not cloudy.
Okay. I mean, you're just going to, I don't know, man. You just deny your own self, I guess. That's fine too.
I don't know what that
So
means, but okay.
let's say you did never exist, right? Let's say you don't exist, Blitz. Then what? Is it still true?
If somebody else is holding that proposition in their mind, then yes, it's still true.
But that's still you making that decision, Blitz.
That's not a decision.
Let's
It's an
Let's
observation.
consider the fact that you don't exist. You have never existed. How can you make a truth statement at all?
I'm not. Somebody else will.
You're making it for them.
I'm not making any of them. I don't
You're
exist,
deciding
Robert.
what is true, Blitz.
Robert, with the $2, thank you for the less of the word salad. I appreciate that. I'm not deciding anything. There's a fact of the matter whether the proposition is true or not.
That fact of the matter is dependent upon your belief in it.
It's not. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because I'm bored.
No, you're good, man. Have a good one. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, legend. All right, let's talk to. Oh, okay. Oh, I should have brought up a TikTok gift or a YouTube guest. YouTube, as the Brits would say. All right, this person's not connecting. Let's bring up a YouTube guest. Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. So, what religion do you believe in?
Well, I'm Christian. I believe in Yahweh, or the God that Jesus prayed to.
Okay.
So, quick question: what's your name?
You can call me Blitz.
Or there you go, Blitz. I want to say a couple things real quick. I appreciate the way you conduct yourself and the way you conversate with people, because a lot of the people that do what you do are very arrogant. A lot of the people that try to defend their position of Christianity come off as very arrogant and personally give Christians a bad name. So I just want to say that I listen to you occasionally, and you're very educated. So to hear your positions is very interesting.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what quick question would also be, your title says I'm an atheist. Are you an atheist or are you agnostic?
I call myself an atheist because I'm convinced that there isn't a God.
Okay, so from my position, where you're far more educated than I am. I only went to high school, and I'm just a blue collar tradesperson. So you're a highly educated individual that I've listened to a little bit, and for me to take a stance of I know there is no God or I know there is a God is interesting, to be rock solid in the foundation of, like, if I asked you to prove to me,
to be clear, I didn't say
there
I
is
know.
no.
I didn't say
Right.
I didn't say I know. I said I said I'm convinced. Right.
Yes, you're convinced. But so for me, the last time I looked up what an atheist is versus what an agnostic is, because agnostic people acknowledge that there could be. They don't know. There could be, but they don't really think there is what I've come to when I talk to agnostic people. Atheist people are, I know there is no God. And I'm not broad categorizing you particularly. Most atheists that I talk to, when I talk to men at work, men out in the world, general conversation wise. So just, that was a quick question. Atheist, agnostic.
Yeah. So often when people hear agnostic, they think that you're on the fence. I'm just not. So that's why I call myself an atheist, so people know what my position is without me having to explain.
Okay. I don't know if you watched that show, Young Sheldon.
I watched some of it.
Okay.
In bursts, and you know how people watch entire TV shows on TikTok nowadays?
Yeah.
I kind of watched it that way. I watched some of it like in full episodes, but you know.
So I've heard an argument come from a Christian, and I've heard it on here, where they say, oh, you know, if Earth was farther away, you know, we'd all melt. And you schooled them, and you taught me something, right? Where, no, Earth orbits in an ellipse, right? Mm-hmm. And changes drastically on distance.
Yeah.
So as a Christian, I have heard other Christians parrot such, you know, comments. But in Young Sheldon, and I did a little bit of research, but I'm not so educated. Sheldon makes a comment about the electromagnetic strong force, I believe, versus some other force. And if at the Big Bang, when it happened, if gravity was slightly stronger, it would have collapsed upon itself. If it was slightly weaker, right, mass would have been scattered across the cosmos, wouldn't have necessarily combined into what it did to make life. Do you know, have you heard that? Does that have any...
What you're referring to is the fine-tuning problem, or the fine-tuning argument. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a pretty common like theistic argument. Some people think it's one of the better ones. I'm not sure. I'm convinced. One of the there are a few potential explanations for why we might expect this to be the case. So one way to think about this is, surely we only have the one universe to look at, right? So like, it's not like we could have, it's not like we know that it could have been different. And so what I propose, or at least one possible explanation, is that the reason why our universe is the way it is the same reason why, like, pi is 3.14, right? Maybe there's some mathematical or geometric fact that makes the only way that the universe could be a way is by having these certain ratios of, you know, constants or whatever.
Right. Some sort of universal constant.
Well, yeah, and in a way that it couldn't have been any other way. And the analogy I often give is, so you know how pi is like the circumference of a circle divided by its diameter?
Yep.
So if you asked, like if you, let's say that you put a whole bunch of like discs, like little circles, like, you know, coins or whatever, into a pouch. And you told, and they're all of different sizes, and they're all of different thicknesses or whatever, and you told somebody who didn't know anything about circles, didn't know anything about pi, if you told them to reach into this pouch and grab just a single one of them, and ask them what are the odds that the ratio of the circumference of the circle to its diameter was 3.14, they might say, that's really remarkable. It could have been anything, because they don't know anything about circles.
Right.
It's only because we know how circles work that actually, once we know that there are all circles in there, we knew that that had to be the answer. There's nothing surprising about that. And so
No,
maybe,
that's a good analogy.
maybe once we know more about the universe, we'll find out that actually these numbers couldn't have been anything else, because that's the way universes work.
Okay. And so from an uneducated stance, Neil deGrasse Tyson also made a comment about Stephen Hawking, I believe, his greatest blunder, right? He did some math equation, and then he removed something, and he said,
You're
"Oh, it
talking
was the
about
biggest
Einstein.
mistake."
This is Albert Einstein, not Stephen
Okay.
Hawking. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, biggest blunder, and then it turned out it was correct, right? And so this man, Albert Einstein, has done math and done all sorts of things on black holes and all sorts of stuff that men have never seen, but the math checks out, right?
Yep.
And so to me, and the reason I brought up the fine tuning, so someone somewhere on your side of the fence did math and said, most likely, right, at the conception of the Big Bang, right, collapse or disperse, right? And dependent on value, circumstance, whatever. Now, for somebody on a theistic side who looks at things as a creator, right, that's fine tuning, right? And so I've used the analogy, I have two, because I don't claim to be, I'm not a theologian. I'm only high school educated, right? I go to church, I read my Bible, but I'm no theologian. And arguably, they don't do a very good job of representing the word of the Bible anyway. But so two quick scenarios. One, if you were walking on a beach and found a Swiss-made watch, right? You picked it up and you were like, wow, cool, this is expensive. You would never assume, right, that this watch just came out of nowhere, right?
No, but that's because I know what watches are and I know how they're made.
Right. Okay. And so, I mean, we know that Earth and planets, we know what they're roughly made of. We know about science. We know about math, right? And so for me, the complexity of a human, of the conversations that me and you can have, the way that our brains work, right? Electricity that's in humans, hearts pumping, right? All this gray matter, all this stuff, to me is fascinating. And so when I look at that, right, if a human just kind of floated up out of the ocean, right, people would be like, well, of course, it came from another human, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't just assume, right, because you know how humans are. Now, for me, humans are so much more complex than the most complex Swiss watch, or even, I use as an example, a cell phone, right? Cell phones are miraculous. Nowadays, the storage capacity, right, the photos, the clearness, right, they're wonderful works of science.
Agreed.
The problem is they die, right? And so what? We got to plug them in the wall, charge them with electricity, and we, on a day-to-day basis, don't even think about it. It's just, a dumbed down thing. It's whatever. It's a cell phone. But humans, right? When you get tired and I just messed up. When you need to recharge, right? You just go to sleep. You eat some food, right?
Well,
your brain
that's what we do for phones, right?
Right. Well, yeah, my point I'm getting at is you're an infinitely more complex version of a phone or a camera, right? Because your data storage, right? I've heard things, I don't know how true they are, right? But like millions of terabytes or whatever, right? Like how much your brain can hold. Look at you, for example.
Yeah, it's a lot.
PhD,
it's a lot.
I believe.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Right?
Our brains are really, really good. I agree.
Yeah, the resolution of your eyes, right? The memory capacity of, you have childhood memories, I have childhood memories, right?
Not very
all
many.
of these things. Yeah.
So
My
you're
point
making
about that
is that
Go
it
ahead.
seems like it was designed, right? It seems like humans were designed.
Yeah. Well, I think everything was designed, right? And the Bible tells us that, God made everything, right? And a designer. And another thing, I don't know how much have you ever been to church? Have you ever studied the Bible? Have you talked? Obviously, you talk with people, but the reason I asked also about the atheist agnostic, because if you come at it from a position of, you can't change my mind, right? Well, then nothing I ever say is going to be any point, right? If you say, you know what, I'll openly listen, right? And then we have a, theological and academic conversation. I like Alex O'Connor. Have you watched his stuff?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the stuff.
Yeah. Right. And he's on the side of, I would love there to be, I just can't find it, right? He's actually where I learned about fine tuning. He argues a couple other really good points, but the reason I brought up, humans versus cameras and phones, because the complexity, the design, and then we design. Look at us. So to me, we were designed. We design, right? And we continue to replicate things, not only that we see in nature, but we dream up.
So Chris, I have to cut you off because I know what argument you're making, and I feel like if I don't cut you off, you'll just keep making the argument over and over again.
No, go ahead, please do.
So I agree that humans are complex. I agree that a lot of things in the universe are complex. The distinction between I suppose your position and mine is that I only assume that complex things are designed when I know where those complex things come from. Like, I know where watches come from. I know where cell phones come from. So I have background knowledge that informs my ability to judge the origins of some cell phone. Like, I didn't see this cell phone get created, but I have background knowledge about cell phones that allows me to judge what the origin of the cell phone was, and I can come to the conclusion that it was designed. But I don't think any of us have actual genuine background knowledge about, like, the origins of life or the origins of the universe. We just don't have that background knowledge. Like, neither of us have been to a universe factory, right? So
I agree.
So I just don't think that just because it's complex means that we know it's designed. Rather, if it's complex and we know things about the thing's history, then we can infer that it's designed. But without that background knowledge, I just don't think that you can come to the conclusion.
So I don't have the note in front of me at the moment, but so Sir Isaac Newton had an apple fall on his head, right?
That's the story anyway. Who knows if it's true?
Okay, so Isaac Newton really helped us fundamentally understand gravity. I know he was born about 300 years ago. I don't know when he published or whatever gravity, right?
Yeah,
now,
that was about so he published about 325 years ago.
Okay, and so I don't have the specifics, but in the book of Job, Abraham wrote the book of Job because it's from a position outside. I won't get into it too much because I'm sure you honestly don't care. But Job was told by God.
Also, Abraham, just to be clear, Abraham did not write the book of Job. The book of Job is fairly recent. It's like one of the later books.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, it was written. I think it was written during the Babylonian exile period, or maybe after that even. Anyway, go ahead.
I will look into that. From my teachings, what I've been taught, what I've looked into, the first, I believed it. Maybe I'm misspeaking. I don't think it was Moses. Anyway, Job is told by God, the earth is suspended upon nothing at all, right? And this was, not verbatim, not 100% sure. It was roughly, if my time frame was right, 1,300 years ago today.
Sorry, one more time.
Right,
repeat
2025.
That.
Say again.
Can you repeat what you said was 2,300 years ago today?
I believe it was 1,300 years ago when Job was alive, and when God told Job that the
Wait,
earth is
1,300
suspended.
years ago? That would have been 700 years after Jesus.
Yeah. I'm sorry. 2,300. So what Isaac Newton was? Oh, I'm sorry. Isaac Newton was 300 years ago, and then
350
from
or so.
Isaac Newton, yes, sorry. From his point, I think it was 2,300 years. Like I said, I don't have the exact. I didn't commit it to memory, but I do recall. So my point I'm making, if I have the numbers correct, which I wish I did, Job is given some insight on the universe, and later God calls into question his knowledge, right? Because Job gets.
So why are we talking about Job?
So you said something about we don't have a universe factory, right? And we don't. You're right. We don't have the prior knowledge like you do of a Swiss watch, right? And
Right.
so what I'm making a point of is there is a few things in the Bible that lends to creation, some things that
okay.
infer
I see what you're saying.
us.
Yeah. See, here's
right.
the problem.
So where we
though.
can gain some knowledge. Go ahead.
So the problem is that you're saying that we can get the background knowledge that it's designed from the book that's claiming it was designed. But if I don't trust the book, then why would I trust the background knowledge?
Some information.
But I don't trust the book to begin with. So why would I trust?
Yeah.
Why would I trust it?
Right. Now, see, this also goes into my point where I made. I could never truly convince an atheist person, one who doesn't even believe in the Bible. I can't use the Bible as a reference, right? But that's the only reference I have for God.
Well, but I think that's why why we're like kind of why the design argument just kind of fails to convince atheists, because the only way that you can defend the idea that the universe is designed is by referencing the Bible, which is a thing they don't already believe.
Right. Now, the only reason I bring it up, though I know, right, an atheist isn't going to believe it. If we could now, and you gave me some interesting information I'm going to have to do some research on. If we could date some writings and we had some information, let's say Job, which you throw a huge wrench in my argument of its date. But if you can find old manuscripts of the Bible that glimpse knowledge. So the thing about the Bible is it's not a science book, right? It's not meant.
I agree.
Right. So some people try to argue, oh, well, it gets this wrong, it gets that wrong. Well, so humans wrote the Bible under inspiration of God, and that's a theologian argument that, right? Some people say it's the Word of God, but men wrote it, right? So that makes a problem. My point is, if you find something, let's say Sir Isaac Newton 300 years ago establishes gravity, but we can find a writing, 2,000 plus years previous Sir Isaac Newton, where it just references, it's not necessarily laying a foundation scholarly that you must understand this in this way. More or less, right, because it's not a science book, more or less, here's a little bit of information, because to me, Job really wouldn't have understood, even if God started laying out complex astrophysics, right? Job wouldn't have got it. How high did they count?
But why
3,000 years.
Why is this relevant? Like, what is?
Well, I guess it's not if you're gonna stand on the point that the Bible is useless completely, but from a Christian standpoint, who's gonna try and convince you about something, is gonna use some reference materials they know.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that if they know that I don't accept the reference material as true?
Well, from my standpoint, I would show my reference material. We could discuss it.
Would you believe a Muslim if they defended their Islamic religion by referring to the Quran?
Well, so Muslims are an interesting topic because Muslims and Christians aren't that far apart. And I don't know how much you want to get down the road of it, but right, I'm not averse to knowledge, right? If we have a conversation about knowledge, sure, let's get it all out in the open.
Right. But you wouldn't. But nothing that they could tell you about the Quran would convince you that to be Muslim, right?
Well, that's not necessarily true, because there are parts of the Quran and the Bible that do line up. There's just differences. So it's at the differences where we would start to fall apart, because in the Quran, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Jesus.
Is there anything they could tell you that's in the Quran that would make you accept the Quran as true? The entirety of the thing.
So it would hinge on, I would assume, something that you would, right? It would have to make sense. And my problem when I've talked to Islamic, I don't know how to say that. When they bring up arguments, just like you dismantle things, right? If I dismantle them with Christian knowledge, right, and it doesn't hold up because Christian, like, so the Torah came before, right? The Greek manuscripts came before Islam. I think it was 500 years, 300 years. I'm not 100% sure.
500 years or so. 500, 600 years.
Yep. Yeah. And so if Islam tells me something that is not in the Bible, but they use their book, I'm going to go to my source because it's the earlier source, and I have a wide range of older manuscripts, right? You can go from Codex Sinaiticus, you can go to the Latin Vulgate, you can go.
So the point is that yes, you would just not accept their Bible or their Quran as true because you have other things that you think are true that disagree with those things.
Sure, yeah.
And that's so you telling me about the Bible is not going to convince me that it's true because I have other things that I think are true that are not in the Bible.
Right. And so
it just won't get me anywhere.
If you read the Bible and found some true statements, would you
there are of course true statements in there.
Okay, yeah. Would you and obviously you acknowledging right there, that's one thing, right? Now, I would have no problem acknowledging truth, right? So if you bring up a statement like you made with Job, I don't know that, I'll look into it. I'll submit to, you knowing something that I don't have a problem with that. But so when somebody brings up a statement, so especially from the Bible, I know that's not your thing. You don't care, right? But would you investigate upon, okay, let's do the math. Let's find out what other sources. So if one man wrote it in, 600 BC, and then it was translated into Greek, and again and again and again it gets copied. It's similar to me, right? If we had a biology book from the 2000s, I'm sure it would be updated, right? 2025, they know new stuff.
Wait. So and then the issue that I had was not like that it was getting updated or that it needed to be fixed or anything. The issue that I had with the Job claim, with the claim that you're making about Job, is that you were trying to use Job as a reference text for the idea that we do know how the universe was created and that it was created by God. The trouble is, that's exactly the claim that I'm disagreeing on. So why would I trust Job, which is a text that's foundational to the belief that you're trying to defend, when I don't agree with that belief as it stands? Like it just becomes circular.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'm not averse in debating good enough to hold that weight, because one, I want to make sure I make it clear. Like I said earlier, the Bible is not a scientific book. So even though it makes some claims and it says some things, that's not what it's hinging upon. That's not what it's.
So why should I believe the universe is designed then, or that humans are designed?
So when I came on here, my point was to say, basically what I see. So when I see things, I look for the creator, right? I'm not going to tell you have to do what I do.
Well,
right?
that is what the background says, though, right?
What do you mean?
Can you convince me to believe in your God? That's the question.
Right. And that's I don't want to sit here and say I'm so smart that I could make you, because
I would
you're a
hope
very
you
smart
would.
individual.
I would hope you would.
Well,
if you
yeah,
have it, if you
so
believe a true
I
thing, I want you to convince me.
yeah. So and to go into a deeper, theologic point, right? I would use scripture, but you're not going to care about it, right? Because to me, it's not all science. You're a very scientific person. So when I look at the world, I see beauty and design. I say, wow, look at the power and magnitude. I see a creator behind it. You necessarily don't. My point was to ask a couple. Yeah, my point was to ask a couple questions, get a stance, because I see it occasionally on YouTube, and I'll listen in some more. I just had a couple questions. I'm not a debater to where I can, really, Alex
lock
O'Connor
in,
you.
scumbag. No, yeah,
Yeah,
no, you're good.
yeah. But so I do appreciate you. I'll do some research, and maybe you'll see me again. I won't take up much more of your time. I appreciate
Sounds
you.
good, bud. Take care.
Thank you, man. Have a good day.
You too. I really need to start shouting "lock in scumbag" more at people, because when Ian does it, it's so funny. Like, it's so funny. All right, y'all. It is 11:05, which means I should probably go to bed because it's past 11 o'clock. Sorry, everybody who's been waiting. My bad. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I gotta end the live here. Maybe I'll do Flat Earth tomorrow. I will see you guys tomorrow. Remember to follow, subscribe, like, join the Discord, all sorts of things. Take care.